Here by mistake, you're here by choice. The idea, again, is that you can experience separation to have a greater appreciation of connection. There are, again, any number of reasons why you might choose to forget who you are. One of them primarily being that it gives you the opportunity to remember who you are, but from a new point of view. Remember, in a timeless, changeless state, you don't grow, you don't learn anything new. But when you forget who you are and go through a process of discovering who you are, you come at it from a new perspective, and it's the new perspectives that actually help you expand and grow. So when you say you think you're perfect in the non-physical state, well, you are what you are in any state, and you are perfectly that thing. But you don't necessarily grow when things are timeless and changeless. So growth, expansion, is one of the primary experiences of all that is knowing itself in all the ways that it possibly can. Otherwise, it just becomes a static thing that has no reason for being.
And is the ego necessary? There's been a lot of different viewpoints of like eliminating the ego, and etc.
Yes, we are laughing at that statement.
I know, because you can't be here and experience this without an ego.
The ego is simply the physical personality that allows you the opportunity to experience yourself as a physical being. That's all it is. As we have used the analogy, it's like a diving mask. You decide to go diving in the ocean. If you want to see clearly under the ocean instead of being murky about it, you need a diving mask that gives you clear vision. That's all the ego is. Now, you can let go and not experience the negative ego, but you can't let go of the ego as long as you are physical.
So it's really a distinction between negative and positive ego, right?
Yes, the positive ego just has one function, to allow you to experience physical reality as clearly as possible. It's just the structure you call the physical mind that allows you to know yourself as a physical being. The negative ego is what happens when you give the positive ego too much to do, beyond what it's designed to do. You make it think it has to control everything. That would be as silly as saying that the diving mask should have the job of telling you where to go and what to look at. No, it's just that when you decide where to go and what to look at, the diving mask gives you a clear vision of it. It doesn't have the responsibility of figuring out what you should do and when you should do it. But when you think that your physical mind has those responsibilities, that it has to control everything, every single moment, then it becomes overburdened and it becomes the negative ego that thinks it's more than it needs to be. But the ego is just a device to allow you to experience yourself as a physical being. That's all it is.
And as far as like free will, like a lot of people have very strong feelings about free will.
Yes, well, you do have free will within the limitations of the destiny you chose to be you. So free will is, again, what you exercise in physical reality to determine how you will experience the idea of the free will choice you made from spirit to walk down a certain hallway, and that hallway is you. So you can only be you in this particular form at this particular moment because that's what you chose to be. You are a unique path. So you can exercise your free will to be many things and many styles of approach within that path, but you can't be something other than you. That's your destiny, so to speak.
What about like developing psychic abilities while you're here on Earth?
Yes, well, you all have psychic abilities.
What are some ways that you can develop those so that you have a more expanded experience here on Earth?
You raise your vibration. And how do you raise your vibration in the easiest possible way? You follow the formula that we've given all of you of acting on your passion, because that raises your frequency.
Right.
And when you raise your frequency, you are capable of doing many of the things that start to happen spontaneously as side effects from being on a higher level of vibration. Simple as that.
That is really noticeable, that as you follow your excitement and your vibration increases, you do seem much more psychically connected with people you're close to, and
yes.
like knowing when the phone's going to ring or
yes.
knowing if somebody's thinking about you, and it just
yes.
becomes normal.
Exactly. The idea of raising your frequency, I'll put it to you mechanically, kind of pushes your electron aura your electromagnetic aura out a little farther, and it has a much more sensitive edge so that it's more capable of connecting to more rarefied things that are not necessarily yet completely crystallized in physical reality, but you can sense them coming because you've made your antenna more sensitive to receiving things that haven't physicalized fully yet. That's all psychic functioning is. So you have to let your aura expand by raising your frequency and allowing it to become a more sensitive electromagnetic organ that can sense things that haven't yet manifested physically.
It's interesting because that sounds a lot like how animals experience their reality, because
They do.
especially animals that are prey animals,
Yes.
because it's like they hear and see things that we aren't familiar or thinking
Yes.
about.
But they also have a heightened electromagnetic field that allows them to sense things that are coming.
So they literally can feel a lot of times whether or not a predator is coming
Yes.
into their field.
Yes, and so can all of you. Many of you have constantly described the idea of knowing when it feels like somebody's watching you and you turn around and see that somebody in fact is staring at you. You can sense these things just like they can. It's just that more often than not, you don't pay attention to those things or think they're just products of your imagination. You see, the animals don't necessarily have the opportunity to think of those things as their imagination. They just simply sense what is.
Right. Like, is there a way to completely stop other people from doing anything violent to you personally?
Yes, by raising your frequency beyond the level in which you might need to experience those things to learn the lessons. So if you allow yourself to learn your lessons through the idea of positive action, being yourself, and being open to learning the lessons and not defining things that happen in a negative way, then yes, you can learn those things and you can raise yourself above the need to jar yourself into learning the lesson by attracting something that you don't prefer.
That's comforting.
Yes, but again, remember, you can't focus on it in a way that says, oh, well, if I can't do that, something's wrong. You have to accept the way in which you're doing things in order to move on to doing them differently. That's the paradox.
Yeah, because there seems like there's a lot of things involved in raising your frequency that we might not exactly understand at this point, but we can understand that when you're following your excitement and you're in that higher state, you're communicating with your higher mind.
Yes.
And your guidance system will work better and better the more precisely you can do that.
Yes, but again, remember, it's not that you're not communicating with your higher mind before that. It's just that going into a higher vibration makes you more aware of the communication that's already been going on.
So, and clearly from that state, you would never see yourself as being victimized by your higher self or higher levels of your own consciousness.
Of course not.
Yeah.
The higher vibrations don't victimize things.
Right.
Only the lower vibrations feel the need to do that.
Are spirit guides real? Like, are they with you every moment? How does this work with spirit guides?
Well, it's not like they watch you take a shower, if that's what you're asking. Spirit guides are real. Yes, of course they are. And they are there in the moments when you truly need them. But remember, they have their own lives to live, even if they're not physical anymore. So it's not like they have to hang around all the time waiting for you to need them. They will be there instantaneously when you do truly need their guidance. But remember, they're just guiding you. They're not living your life for you. They're not figuring everything out for you. They're just giving you the encouragement and a hint here and there, now and then, to help you move in the direction that is true for you. But yes, you all have them, and sometimes they can even take turns, depending upon what their strengths are and what they're learning.
So really, when it comes down to it, the being or the consciousness that is paying attention to you all the time and cares about you as much as you care about you is your higher self.
The higher self, yes, and of course all that is.
Right. But of course, we
other
don't really...
beings, other beings have things to do, but they will be there according to their commitment to you in whatever way actually works best for all concerned.
But your higher self is there with you all the time, moment by moment, never leaves you.
Yes, it can't. It can't. It is you.
Right. It's like the other half of your beingness.
Yes.
Your physical, you have your physical beingness, and then you have the higher self, which is the
Non-physical.
non-physical aspect of you that's directly connected to your soul. And
Yes. Well, it's all connected to your soul.
right,
The
but
soul is the higher mind and the physical mind, reflecting to itself from different points of view. So you can't really separate those things out. The physical mind and the higher mind are the soul, experiencing itself in this particular way.
okay, and this person here is asking about past and future life connections, and they say, well, why do you sometimes tell people things like you were in the Black League, but then at other times you tell people that they're a human on Earth and just making connections to other lives?
It's the difference between the experience and the actual mechanism. And we understand that sometimes in our communications we go back and forth. But we have also taught you to learn the difference between those two so that when you hear us say, you were in the Black League, you know that we're actually describing the experience you have created from the mechanism of being here now and just energetically connecting to someone in the Black League. So you have to learn the difference so you can apply those definitions yourself when we go back and forth for ease of conversation.
Okay. And also, why do you call April by the name of her Sasani counterpart, Nania? Is she actually Nania or channeling her during these transmissions?
April is what we would call Nania Viqua. The full name would be the seed of Nania, being a connection in another life that isn't literally my daughter Nania, which isn't her name, it's just a word that means daughter. But again, the idea is the full representation of April would be Nania Viqua, the seed of Nania, a connection to Nania that informs Nania of a certain perspective that Nania can connect to. But Nania, my daughter, is a different being, but can connect to April in a way that allows her information that is necessary for her in the same way April can connect to my daughter to feed her information that is necessary for her journey on Earth. We don't mean this to be confusing.
Okay, thank you. My daughter passed away about 3 years ago. I would like to know how to establish clear and deep communication with her.
Spirits will often attempt to communicate. Anytime you may think of her, anything that reminds you of her can actually be a communication. So you have to pay attention to the synchronicity of how her thoughts come up in your mind, thoughts of her, and allow yourself more openness so that when you think of her, you're not grieving. Because sometimes when people grieve, I'm not saying you shouldn't or can't, but sometimes when time has passed and a thought comes up and you still feel grief and sadness and sorrow, that may simply be because you are applying the definition to them that means you've lost something. Whereas the grief you're feeling may actually be a symbol of the fact that they're attempting to connect to you and get a message to you, but you're experiencing their energy as a loss and therefore experience it as grief instead of being open to the fact that they actually being communicating something to you. So you have to relax the idea that you feel you've lost them, that they're still here, and that you can open up to a connection and receive information from them. When you feel the idea of grief, know that that may be a communication from them, and don't continue to define that as a loss.
It's your question about star seeds. What would be your definition of a star seed?
A star seed is simply someone who has recognized they have connections to other places and other times, and that the intention behind being aware of those connections allows them to know that they have chosen to be on Earth at this time as the being that they are, to aid and assist with the evolution of the Earth in the most positive way possible. That's a star seed from our perspective. It's not that they come from somewhere else as the being they are on Earth, but they do have connections on higher levels to many other places. It's just that they're using the awareness of those connections to be of assistance in accelerating and aiding and assisting in the evolution of the human being on Earth at this time. That's a star seed.
Are they genetically different from
They can
average
be.
people?
They can be.
How would they be? Would they be enhanced genetically? Is that the
There
idea?
are many different ways in which the genetics can reflect their ability to bring energy through from higher levels to be of assistance to the evolution of humanity on Earth.
Okay, so they're not like ordinary people. Is that sort of the idea, or
Define
they
ordinary.
just? Yeah, that's why it's kind of hard to understand the
As I
concept.
said, the key is having the awareness of their intention to aid and assist in the evolution of the Earth. The awareness alone makes a difference in what you're calling the difference between someone who allows their genetics to bring through the energy in a particular frequency that is of assistance, and what you're terming an ordinary person who may be unaware of that connection.
I see. And what happens when someone commits suicide?
Well, again, it depends upon what they believed would happen to them on the other side, as you say. But in general, it's about the same as anyone who dies. They may wallow in certain kinds of regrets at first. They may be more of an earthbound spirit at first because they don't even necessarily know what they can experience in spirit. But ultimately, guides on that side will help them realize that they have crossed over. They will go through their life review, learning what choices they made and what might they have made instead, and learn from those ideas. And then they will apply that information and knowledge to whatever it is that they would like to do next that fulfills their soul commitment.
So
There's no
do a lot
punishment.
of times they
There's
have
no
to come
punishment.
back?
That's their choice. They could do it a different way. But again, in realizing the idea of the commitment that they made for a certain intentional lesson, they can decide how to experience that. Many of them do decide to create the experience of reincarnation, to go through it in the quickest way possible, because that is an accelerated way to do that. Many people may decide to remain in spirit and experience it in a different way. It just depends. But they're given the choice.
So when they go through life review, though, they probably also see the consequence of their choice on the other people in their lives.
Oh,
And
they don't just see it. They don't just see it. They experience it as if they are those other people, because now they are more firmly connected to those other people, and they feel everything that everyone went through as a consequence of the choice of killing themselves.
but most people will feel regret for having done it if they've done it to escape the.
Yes, they will feel it not exactly as the same kind of regret that you experience in physical reality, but they will have a very strong sensation of the idea that it wasn't necessarily the best choice they could have made. It's the closest thing, perhaps, that you can experience as regret, but it's not exactly the same feeling. It's just an overwhelming understanding that it was a choice made that wasn't necessarily true to your path, to who you really are. And that can be as powerful and maybe even more powerful than the idea you call regret. But it's not exactly the same thing. Because regret in your context implies a judgment of negativity against yourself. This is not a judgment of negativity. It is simply a full realization that you made a choice that was out of alignment with what your original intention was.
And are we able to see and communicate with parallel versions of ourselves? And are there parallel versions of ourselves watching us?
Yes and yes. You're already connecting to parallel versions of yourselves, even to create the experience you call time. You think that you live in one straight linear reality, but you don't. What you call one timeline is actually composed of many different timelines. So you're in constant communication with alternate realities and choosing from among them to create what you experience as one linear timeline or reality. And sometimes versions of yourself or other beings in parallel realities do have evolved to the point where they can be aware more consciously of other parallel versions of themselves or other beings in other parallel realities. So yes, some may be watching, but some may not.
So, just in closing, it seems like the most important thing we can do is to embrace our experience here in physical reality and to use it as a learning tool to be able to make good choices that will be supportive of us and of others,
Yes.
and to not try and run away from the negativity, but rather to transform it into a positive expression.
Yes, that doesn't mean that you start calling things you recognize as negative as if they're positive unto themselves. You can still have the discernment to tell the difference between something that was created out of negativity and something that is created from positive energy. I'm simply saying that you can transform your experience of that for yourself into something positive by defining that there must have been a reason to experience that negative thing in your life that could serve you if you stay in a positive state.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to final thoughts about being here on Earth and how to really have a wonderful heaven on Earth experience?
My thoughts will never be final. We will always have something to say to be of assistance in helping to guide you into the understanding that you have all the power. You chose to be where you are. That's why you are in physical reality. You knew it would serve you in some way, shape, or form. So we would always encourage you to look for the definitions for anything that happens, to be the definitions that would be the ones that would allow you to experience the service in a positive way, instead of simply falling victim to the idea that just because this is happening, something is bad, that something is wrong, that it doesn't belong in your life. If it's there for a reason. Own it, take responsibility for it, and you will be able to transform it in wondrous and magical ways that will allow you to experience a life of beautiful joy. So we will now encourage you to explore with us the upcoming exercise and meditation.
Thank you, Bashar. We love you very much.
Our unconditional love to you all, and allow yourselves now to move forward